Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, your co-host, Shaq. We're going to be talking UFC 252, Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier. And Shaq, it's going down this Saturday in Las Vegas, Nevada. The heavyweight championship is on the line. One man's going to walk out the baddest man on the planet, and they're going to get to determine who wins the trilogy.
Yeah, it's not too often where we get these type of trilogy fights, especially in the heavyweight division. The last one I can remember is, JDS and Cain Velasquez, so this is a good rivalry they got brewing on here. I think the winner is guaranteed to go down as the greatest, heavyweight of all time, aka the baddest man on the planet. And, it's DC's last fight, man. He's had a great run. A legendary career, champs in 2 weight classes. So, and Stipe Miocic, man, the dude beat Francis Ngannou. He's beat Overeem. I mean, he is the greatest heavyweight of all time currently. So I'm excited.
Man, when you think about the trilogies that have taken place in the sport, for the most part, they've been pretty epic. I mean, you look at a fight between Matt Hughes and BJ Penn. You look at Randy Couture and Chuck Liddell. So to see this one go up there in history, it's pretty exciting to see, man. And I feel like this one's happened so fast. Like, really, literally, the trilogy, all 3 fights have taken place within a year or 2 time span. So basically, they're about to get it done real quick and get it figured out. And I'm curious to see how DC reacts in the deep waters, because historically speaking, in these 5-round fights, he pushes such a hard pace. He tends to slow down a bit. Stipe, one thing about him, he's got serious cardio. So, man, I'm very intrigued by the main event and to see what goes down when these 2 lock horns, Shaq.
Yeah, man, 100%. The first fight, I know Stipe was a big favorite and he got knocked out. He said he had some personal issues going on, and, but man, you got to give credit to DC. And in the second fight, it kind of seemed like DC did get carried away a little bit. Let's be honest here. He was up 3-0 clear. It's just, he was kind of, there's 2 more rounds, you still got 2 more rounds to go. And I think maybe he kind of pushed it like it was a 3-round fight. So, yeah, man, that's some good points. And, Stipe Miocic, like, this guy, for a champion, man, he's like one of the more counted out champions. Like, he seems like a lot of people always go against him, but he always gets the job done.
Man, I mean, the guy beat Francis Ngannou, so that's all I got to say. Well, Shaq, let's get right down to business, because first up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Kamaka, he's 7-2, and Tony Kelley is 5-1. Currently, they got Kamaka minus 230. The comeback on Tony Kelley is plus 195. Well, Shaq, this is what I know about these guys. I saw Kamaka fight on LFA 2 weeks ago, and man, I thought he was UFC ready then. I mean, he's a Hawaiian warrior. He's in fantastic shape. He can go 3 rounds. He trains with Ray Cooper. Very aggressive guy, but he's not like first round or bust anything. I've seen him win plenty of decisions, and I thought to myself in that last fight, like, hey, this guy might get a call soon, and here he is, and he's taking on Tony Kelley. And interestingly enough, do you remember that MTV show back in the day that Matt Schnell was on? Tony Kelley was actually on there with him, and, he actually lost a close split decision to Kevin Aguilar. So for that to be his only loss on the regional scene, that's pretty damn good. And, Tony Kelley's no slouch at all. Comes out of that Louisiana fight scene. You already know Louisiana has produced a lot of UFC fighters, whether it's the former champ, Dustin Poirier, or even guys like Matt Schnell, and more recently, Head Kicks MMA, Aaron Phillips. So definitely a lot of guys from that scene have made it to the UFC. Now it's Tony Kelley's turn. I just kind of feel like Kamaka is the superior athlete here, and he's the more well-rounded guy.
Don't forget about my boy Brennan. He's from Louisiana.
Oh, yeah, good point. Yeah, so great point, Shaq. Lots of guys. Brendan Allen's been doing his thing. So they produce some real fighters in that Louisiana scene, man. So Tony Kelley, he's ready to go. He's decent everywhere the fight goes. I would say his takedown defense needs a lot of work. He's kind of too content to play off his back and look for subs and things like that. So I'm going to go with Kamaka. I think he's probably the more well-rounded fighter. I think he's got the higher ceiling. I think he's the better athlete. And I like his attacks, man. I like how he just goes forward the entire time, rips the body hard with punches, with kicks. I'm going to go with Kamaka to get it done here in his UFC debut.
Yeah, Kamaka, he seemed like a Hawaiian banger. He seemed like he was, willing to stay in the pocket and trade. His LFA fight looked really good the first round, but then he kind of got a little over-aggressive the second, but he was able to gather himself and win the third. And Kelley, I'm pretty familiar. I remember him from the from the show with Schnell, it's actually funny because, you know, he was actually the main character of that of that show, I believe. I think like he was like supposedly supposed to be, you know, the guy. It wasn't even supposed to be Schnell, but you know, here he is now. His fight with Kevin Aguilar was very exciting, very back and forth, but it was a split decision. But it was one of those things where it was like it's close because Kevin Aguilar blocks punches with his face. You know, I don't think it was like, you know, a skill thing necessarily, man. So yeah, I lean Kamaka. I just think he's way more physical, and he's fought better competition as well. So I'm gonna go with him for the win.
Now, next up in the heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Chris Daukaus, he's 8-3, and Parker Porter is 10-5. Currently, they got Parker Porter -120. The comeback on Chris Daukaus is +100. So line margins have definitely tightened up because Parker Porter opened up a bigger favorite. And interesting little tidbit here: Parker Porter actually fought John Bones Jones, on the regional scene, got knocked out in like 30 seconds. But no matter what happens, when it's all said and done, he can always be the guy that said, hey, I fought John Jones on the regional scene. I even got to fight in the UFC once. So that's a pretty cool dude. And obviously Chris Daukaus, the brother of Kyle Daukaus. But Shaq, oftentimes when you see these brother tandems, there's the talented brother and there's the shitty brother. And I'm not talking about like the Burns brothers or the Diaz brothers or the Pettis brothers. I'm talking about every other example, right? Like usually there's the talented guy and the not so talented one. And if you're expecting,
you mean like the Tamor brothers?
If you're expecting Chris Daukaus to come out here and be like some transition master like his brother, to, you know, be this high level black belt like his brother, if you're expecting Backtake City like his brother, you might be in for a little surprise when you see the fat guy kind of go to his back easily here. So I'm going to go with Parker Porter, and I hope he gets on the mic and calls out John Jones and says, I want my rematch.
Yeah, you know, Daukaus definitely, yeah, that was kind of my thoughts as well. You know, I was like, you know, it always seems like the little brother's way better than the big brother, you know. and that was the case here, man. I really don't think either guy is UFC caliber, to be honest. Like, I think Porter is big. I don't want to say like too bigger, but he seems like he gets to the point more. Like he throws his big overhand right, his big low kicks, look to get the takedowns, and when he gets on top, he is a load. He's 6'2", 265. Daukaus is a big boy too. It's just Daukaus, man. He's fought all bums. Got knocked out against Zoo. I can't say his last name, but, you know, I just really wasn't impressed with either guy, to be honest. But I was more underwhelmed with Daukaus, man. I was like, man, this guy, yeah, you know, I think it's gonna be an ugly fight. I lean Parker Porter, but you know, maybe Chris Daukaus can get some help from his little bro. His little bro went 3 rounds with Brennan. You know, that's something Kevin Holland couldn't do.
Yeah, look, if they want to do Kyle Daukaus versus Parker Porter, I got Kyle Daukaus for sure. You know what I mean? First round finish, but Chris Daukaus, I'm not so sure, but I'm happy he's in the UFC. So let's see what happens. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Downtown TJ Brown, he's 14-7, and Danny Chavez is 10-3. Currently, they got TJ Brown -150. The comeback on Danny Chavez is +130. Well, Shaq, what's interesting about this, again, just like the last fight, is that the favorite actually opened up a lot wider than he currently is. You know what I mean? TJ Brown opened close to 2-1. And I feel like the reason a lot of action's coming in against him is because, you know, firstly, people don't really respect wrestlers. But secondly, in all of TJ's losses, you know, he's been finished and he gets dropped in a lot of the fights he wins too. So definitely a question in the durability side of things. But one thing there's no question about is if this fight goes to decision, I mean, TJ Brown's never lost a decision. This guy is going to work the entire time until he either wins or until he either gets caught. Now, all I know about Danny Chavez is I've seen a 10-second head kick knockout, which, you know, it was great to watch, but it didn't really like tell me much. And I saw an IG photo of him from 2017 with a black belt. So that's really all I know about the guy. I don't know what kind of black belt he is. I don't know if he's a guard puller. I don't know if he's an aggressive top guy. I don't know shit, except I saw a picture of him in a gi with a black belt, and I saw him knock some random guy out with a head kick. I got to go with TJ Brown here. I think he pushes the pace, and as long as he doesn't get finished, I think he goes ahead and wins his first UFC fight.
Yeah, man, TJ Brown is one of those guys where it's actually really unfortunate because, you know, he has a really good, like, pressure wrestling style. Like he's hell bent on the takedown, and he's good on top. But it just seems like, I think when he gets in there, it's a mental thing. I think like he blacks out and he like just loses focus, and which leads to he kind of reminded me of Maki Pitolo a little bit. Like he just loses focus a little, and then he gets knocked out or submitted, or and there'll be fights that he's winning too. Like, and it's unfortunate. Like the last fight, he was fucking dominating Jordan Griffin, and then he gets finished. So, from a betting perspective, man, I know he opened a big favorite, and I think that's because I don't know shit about Chavez. All I know is, he comes from MMA Masters. That's where, Lamas comes from. That's where Miguel Baeza comes from. So, I'm pretty sure he's got the right training here. So I think his black belt is legit, because Baeza is a legit black belt, and Lamas is a second degree black belt. So, I think his black belt's legit. I have a feeling that he is going to get a knockout. I feel like TJ Brown just can't keep it together throughout the course of 15 minutes. This is just a feeling. I don't know really shit about him. I've only seen the head kick you've seen, and, and that's about it. But, TJ Brown is just a guy where, like, if he gets hit on the chin clean after a couple of wrestling exchanges and he's a little fatigued, he's gonna hit the canvas, bro, he got choked out from Jordan Griffin was in like bottom side control, you know what I'm saying, and he got choked out. So, man, this guy TJ Brown is real skitsy. So I'll take Chavez by finish.
Now, next up in the strawweight division, we got a matchup between Virna Jandiroba, she's 15-1, and the return of Felice Herrig, she's 14-8. Currently, they got Virna Jandiroba -310. The comeback on Felice Herrig is +255. Shaq, I gotta know, with a line like this, is it one takedown and the fight's over shortly after?
Yeah, man, this is a good fight. Felice is coming off the ACL surgery, so I'm assuming that's probably a lot of the reason why the line's off. And her last fight, man, she looked like a stiff, and she got really tired, and she was getting head and arm thrown by Watterson. And Jandiroba, she had that fight with Carla on short notice, so I'll cut her some slack in that one. It was a week short notice, and she won a round at least. Like, but the other 2 rounds, Carla Esparza is like top 6, so she just got outclassed a little bit. And then the second one, she was able to do her thing, get on top. And Jandiroba's like an interesting case to me, because I feel like overall, honestly, she is nothing too special. Like, I just think that she's a specialist. I think she's a specialist on the ground. I think that if she can get on top of some of these girls, that her jiu-jitsu prowess is just going to be a little bit too much. Now, it's weird because Felice like also kind of uses the same type of strategy. She kind of like, and look at her wins, the Justine Quiche fight, she just back takes her the entire time, or the Grasso fight, she got some takedowns. And when I was watching tape on this, I was like, could one say that Felice is more well-rounded than Jandiroba? Yeah, I mean, I think there's a decent argument there to be made. It's just, I think his fight's more so mentally with Felice. Like, I just, I just don't like what in some of these fights, man, especially the last 2, I know it was against, somewhat top competition at the time, but, there were just moments where like she gets so tired and stiff, and she's in the clinch, and, she's a tough girl. I give her that. She's definitely a lot more tougher than I thought going into this. My only concern is, what if Jandiroba's takedown game isn't working? Because on the feet, man, Jandiroba's really slow. She doesn't really like do much. She ain't gonna come out here and stick the jab out or anything like that. It's just overhand right to the takedown, man. I personally think she's gonna get the win. I just think she's a tougher, and she'll be able to keep it together mentally. But man, what if that takedown game isn't working? Then I feel like it could potentially be a close fight, just because I feel like Felice throws kicks, I don't want to say better hands, but just, she's fought better strikers, in the past, and done pretty good against them. So I'll take Jandiroba for a pick. I wish the line was a little closer. I think currently it's a little bit of a stretch, but from a pick perspective, I gotta go with Jandiroba. She's been more active. She went three tough rounds with the spars that gotta finish her next one, and I truly think she's a specialist. I think that when she gets on top of some of these girls, man, they'll panic, and we've seen what happens. To Felice, man, she lost to Paige Van Zandt. She got tapped out against Random Marcos. But man, she had a good stretch. But the last two fights, I guess it was just a step up in competition. I don't know what it was, but she got exposed. So I'll go with the Jandiroba.
Yeah, look, I mean, after Felice's last two fights, we were thinking, hey, she's kind of on her way out. She's at the tail end of her career. And this was 2 years ago. And then after those performances, now she's got a 2-year layoff plus an ACL surgery. So it's not like I'm expecting her to come out here reinvigorated or the best form of her career. I'm expecting a step down from the last version we saw. And like I said, the last version we saw, we were already heavily criticizing. So you do bring up a good point, just like with any of these specialists, if they can't get the takedown, then yeah, then they start to flop, then they start to get gassed, the whole bit. I get it. It's just I think she will get the takedown. I mean, look, she even in that loss to Carla Esparza, she still took down Carla Esparza 3 times in that fight. And I think she's only going to need one good takedown to discourage Felice Herrig past the mount. And then when Felice tries to buck her off, take her back, choke her out, I'm going Virna Jandiroba via submission here. Now, also in the strawweight division, we got a matchup between Livinha Souza, she's 13-2, and Ashley Yoder is 7-5. Currently, they got Livinha Souza minus 165. The comeback on Ashley Yoder is plus 145. Shaq, this is interesting because I would say that Livinha Souza is the tougher fighter here for sure, but she's also the way smaller fighter, and the area of success that Yoder's had in the past has been her grappling abilities. Do you think she can grapple the smaller opponent here?
I feel like you said, Souza's tougher. Yoder's longer. Yoder's really long. She's got long legs, long left hand. Man, this fight, because when I watch Yoder, to be honest, bro, like, I'm not going to say she's not UFC caliber, but because she went to split with McKenzie and she's been in some close fights. But where I will criticize her is, man, I personally don't think, heart-wise, like when a fight's like 1-1 and it's gritty back and forth and, y'all are fighting for the last takedown, she has folded every single time. The Justine Keys fight, that was a close fight in the 3rd round. But what happened? Ashley Yoder pulled guard and, and went to her back. The Mackenzie Dern fight, somewhat of a close fight, but then 3rd round, Mackenzie Dern got on top of her and started pounding her out, and she just didn't do enough. Even in her one win or win against Bobby Cooper, like, it was a close fight. Like, it could have went either way, man. Like, and Bobby Cooper's, just a UFC reject. And then, she had the win over Suri Kondo. I think I was there. Yeah, I was there live. She did her thing there, but we know Suri Kondo's not in the UFC anymore. And, Random Marcos, like, I actually thought Yoder did some good things. Like, she is a black belt. You got 2 black belts going against each other. And, she was able to get on top of Marcos. And I think her length really caused some problems. But, man, she got really tired in the boxing exchanges, man. They were just uncomfortable. Like, she was getting tagged on the chin really big, and Marcos was definitely cracking her with some right hands. So Souza, on the other hand, I feel like she's kind of been a little bit of a letdown since she got signed. But, to be honest, her last fight with Van Buren, I'm going to just go ahead and say I don't think Ashley Yoder is capable of doing anything like that. I don't see Ashley Yoder coming out here and throwing Chris boxing combos in the pocket and slamming Livinha with double legs. I know Van Buren just lost her last fight, but I think she's a different level. I feel like Souza is more basic. She just gets, it's either, over. It's kind of like a lesser version of Jandiroba, overhand right takedown, and I think it's going to be a close fight no matter which way you look at it. But I think, in this close fight, when the going gets tough and both girls are a little fatigued and tired, I'm going to take Livinha Souza to win this extra scramble, to get on Ashley Yoder's back, or land some overhand rights when Yoder's tired. I do think this fight's going to come down to toughness. So I'm going to take the more intense person, and I'm going to take the the person where I do feel like Livinha is slightly the better black belt and slightly better boxing, but she can't back up in this fight because Yoder's tall. But personally, Yoder's taller than everyone she fights, and I just don't feel like she utilizes that range very well, man. So I'm gonna go with Livinha.
Yeah, look, Yoder's definitely got a path to victory. Like I said, she's the bigger woman here. If she can go ahead and kind of, not big brother, big sister Livinha, you know what I mean? Body her, get her to the mat, kind of lay on her for 2 of the 3 rounds. She's got the path. It's just that, like you said, and I agree with you, if this becomes a tough fight, if this becomes a battle of wills, if this becomes, a situation of who is the tougher fighter and who wants it more, Livinha is going to win that all day. Like, I've seen Livinha knock girls out with overhand rights before. Like, I've seen her stop people before. I've seen her be mean in there before. And I don't think that Ashley Yoder is as relentless as Brianna Van Buren was that night. So I do agree with you. I see the argument for the dogger pass situation. It's just that, like, it has to be the perfect performance from Yoder. Like, she can't get touched on the chin. She can't get reversed because, you know what happens when she gets reversed, right? She ain't getting back up. So I'm going to lean with Livinha Souza to get back on track. We'll see what happens. Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Jim Miller, he's 32-14, and Vinc Pichel is 12-2. Currently, they got Vinc Pichel minus 125. The comeback on Jim Miller's plus 105. So, as you know, Shaq, Jim Miller's extending the record for most fights in UFC history. And, I mean, he's been on somewhat of a good run. I mean, from losing a bunch of fights back-to-back. Now, granted, it was against Pettis, Poirier, Trinaldo. It was against some real guys. But if you're not quite on that level, he's not just going to beat you. He's going to finish you in the first round. Vinc is a tough guy. He's kind of that middle ground between the guys that Jim was losing to and the guys that he was beating. Vinc is kind of in the middle, I feel like. And Vinc is a tough guy. One thing Vinc is known for is his cardio. And usually when fights go past the first round, Jim does have a little bit of trouble these days. But do you think that Vinc pushes the kind of pace to fatigue a guy like Jim Miller if this goes the distance?
Yeah, I think we know what Jim Miller brings to the table in that first round. He's got that spectacular finishing ability with the guillotines, the arm bars, even his boxing. But we know what the deal is. Historically speaking, if you can get him into the second and third rounds, he will start to slow down, and I think that's going to be the case here. His last fight, Roosevelt slipped and put him right in perfect position, and that was it, man. And that seems like how a lot of his fights go. And then, Vinc Pichel, man, this guy, been a fan of his since Tough 15, one of the better seasons of Tough. And it seems like everyone on that season, man, they all have a respect for Pichel, man. It's like, that's Vinc, bro. You don't fuck around with Vinc, man. But yeah, man, I think Vinc is crafty as fuck. Vinc actually kind of is a point fighter, to be honest, man. Like Vinc kind of like, will play games from the outside. Like he has a point fighting basis. Like he gets a lot of knockouts, but I'm saying like he moves on the outside. He switches stance. He likes to throw the inside low kicks, the jabs. And then when he gets his range, then, he'll start to open up a little bit more, and he does get better as the fight progresses. The Jim Miller opening line being minus 180, I think, if you got that Pichel at, plus 140, 150, I feel like, yeah, man, you're definitely on the right side. Cause I do think if Pichel gets into the late rounds that he can start, the volume will start to separate him from Jim Miller. And Jim Miller, he's a tough guy, but man, in that Holtzman fight, I actually watched it again, man, and man, it was actually a more sloppier fight than I realized because, like, Jim was actually cracking Scotty with left hands, and like in the second round, Scotty just took him down, and that was it, man. He just stayed on his back and got smashed on. And third round, it was more of the same. So I do feel like Jim can finish Vinc, but Vinc is a tough guy, man. Like, it's going to be hard to finish Vinc Pichel. It's going to have to be an armbar, a guillotine, and I honestly don't see it happening, so I'm going to go with Vinc. I think he's the tougher guy throughout the 15 minutes. But just currently where the line is now, I wouldn't play Vinc just because, like, he was a bigger dog at one point. I don't think there's any more value at this point. But Jim Miller, man, you can't count this guy out. He did open a favorite. He's a dog now. It's just, man, I think Vinc Pichel's got a lot more experience, a lot more composure than some of these young guys like, Roosevelt. And he already beat Roosevelt. He was the first one to beat Roosevelt. And, Alex White and and some of these guys that he's been beating. So I'm gonna go with From Hell Pichel from Tough 15.
Yeah, I agree with you that Tough 15 was one of the best seasons of the Ultimate Fighter. A lot of those guys still in the UFC today. But, man, this is interesting because obviously the thing with Jim is that when fights go past the first round, historically speaking, he tends to lose those fights. And I have a feeling this will go past the first round. However, I'm just not convinced that Vince is going to make him work the entire time like these other guys have, which forces him to gas. Like, Vince doesn't really put that pressure on or push that pace, which I think is going to gas out Miller. But it's also like, is Miller going to gas himself out by trying, so hard to get that finish in the first round? It's a tough fight to call. I'm actually leaning towards Jim Miller here. I think he's the better fighter. And I think if he can just not totally blow his load in that first round, if he's got enough to go out there and win the second as well, this could actually be the first fight in a while where he wins a decision. But Vince is very tough. Not going to count him out, but I'm leaning with Jim Miller here. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Herbert the Blaze Burns. He's 11-2, and Daniel the Pit Pineda is 26-13. Currently, they got Herbert Burns minus 280. The comeback on Daniel Pineda is plus 240. Well, Shaq, I was one of the few people that was actually kind of disappointed when Daniel Pineda got cut from the UFC the first time because I always felt like he was a really exciting guy, win, lose, or draw. And now when you look at it, and, the guy's had over 40 pro fights, you know that he's still never been to a decision before. Pineda is kill or be killed and has been like that his entire career. And that makes him a super exciting guy to watch. Now, I hear a lot of people talking about how all he's got to do is survive this first-round jiu-jitsu storm from Herbert, and then he's going to win the decision. It's like, really? Well, Pineda's 0-6 when fights go to decision, right? And not to mention, he's been submitted 6 times as well. So I feel like I really like watching Pineda fight. It's just that one of his main qualities is that he relies on his scrambling ability, which makes for awesome fights to watch and is a quality you enjoy watching just as, this guy's a badass. But like against Herbert Burns, that seems to me like a really, really bad style to go up against him because you put yourself in one bad spot against a guy like Herbert Burns. And I think the fight will be over shortly after. And I feel like even though Herbert's this big favorite, I feel like a lot of the MMA community underrate him, actually. They think that they're under the impression that he's a very overrated guy, that he's all hype. And I feel like his jiu-jitsu skills are legit as hell, man. And I feel like he's been making improvements. I feel like he's been getting better every single fight. So I don't think Herbert's overhyped. And another big thing, that Daniel's last 2 fights were overturned because of, PEDs. And all I got to say is if you test positive for PEDs and PFL, I mean, he must have been injecting like horse semen into himself for him to fucking test positive because everybody in PFL is juiced and none of those guys are testing positive. So for him to test positive, like, holy shit, now you take it a step further. What's he going to look like in the USADA testing pool? Is he going to be a little deflated? And last thing, his last fight against Jeremy Kennedy. Jeremy Kennedy took his back. What's going to happen when Herbert Burns does the same thing? So I'm going Herbert Burns here via first-round submission again.
Yeah, man. Herbert Burns, to be honest, is one of my favorite 145 prospects at the moment, man. I actually max bet him his last fight against Dunham. Dunham was a black belt, and you've seen what happened when they got on the mat. I mean, it was over very quickly. And I feel like it's gonna be the same thing here on Saturday night. I'm a big fan of the Pit Pineda, but bro, like this whole career resurgence he's on, bro, he ain't been fighting nobody. I know he knocked out the Russian, and it was funny because that Russian actually beat Herbert too. He beat Herbert in ONE FC, I believe. So I think Herbert, man, is just a different, like I tried to say before the Dunham fight, man, it's a different caliber of jiu-jitsu. And don't sleep on the kid striking either. I know it's not the prettiest, but like, bro, you saw what he did to Nate the Train down there in North Carolina. Like he He knocked him out with the knee, and I think that his striking is getting better. Just give him some time to get more comfortable. But the jiu-jitsu, like you said, Jeremy Kennedy was on this guy's back. Even some of his other fights, man, like it's one of those things where it hurt. Like the Burns brothers jiu-jitsu, it's a different level. Like you give those guys a hook, an arm, it's over. And I think Daniel Pineda is going to be tapping for the. How many times has he been submitted in his career?
6.
I think he's going to be tapping for the 7th time in his career on Saturday night. So I'm gonna go with Herbert Burns to continue the run for the Burns brothers. And man, let's be honest here. If the Burns brothers and the Diaz bros meet up in the street, who's winning that?
It's a great fight. 4 black belts. Currently,
the Burns brothers would play with them on that mat, right?
Man, I'd love to see it. So next up in the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between John the Magician Dodson. He's 21-11, and Merab Dvalishvili is 11-4. Currently, they got Merab Dvalishvili minus 240. The comeback on John Dodson is plus 200. Well, Shaq, we know that John Dodson stopped the last prospect he fought. You think he stops this one too?
Man, this is a good fight because, like initially coming into this week, I was like, oh, Merab's going to fucking whip his ass. But man, I actually think Dodson kind of looked rejuvenated a little bit his last fight against Wood. And, you cannot forget that man. And the reason why, at first I was thinking Wood was going to win that fight. But man, when I started watching Tay, I was like, man, Dodson is a tough fight, man. Like, it ain't easy fighting Dodson, bro, because like he kind of doesn't give you much to go on, and you start chasing him around because he likes to run in there, man. It's like then you make a mistake and get countered and dropped, and he dropped, bro. Let's listen to the people that this guy's dropped. He floored Peter Yan. He dropped Marlon Moraes. He knocked out TJ Dillashaw. And like, man, the competition level, this guy had been fighting murderers, Rowe, bro, Peter, Pedro Munoz, all the guys I just said. This guy, man, is very tested. And although a lot of people don't like his little kid gimmick, man, this guy is a very good fighter, man, a very underrated fighter. And Merab Dvalishvili, I love Merab. He's a ball of energy. I say it over and over. Takedown City. But, man, let's just be honest here, bro. He ain't fought no one even close to a John Dodson before. And I kind of do think that his resume and this line is a bit inflated, man. And I'm not sitting here saying that John Dodson's going to come out here and catch him, because I know what the deal is here. He's fighting an uphill battle just because Merab is very, wind-driven. He's going to press. And we know Dodson's got, north of a 80% takedown defense, I believe. And it's very hard. He's very squirmy. But Merab, he just has the style to get the win. He presses. He's the one that's leading the dance. He's the one that's, moving forward. But, man, let's just be honest here, bro. In that Casey Kinney fight, I know he did his thing with the takedowns, but, bro, in the boxing exchanges, there was not just one moment that made me very nervous with this fight with Dodson. There were several moments that made me nervous. There were so many times where Casey just fell short of that left hand. I mean, he did crack him with the left hand, but imagine what a better guy, a more experienced guy, a guy that's been in there with Peter Yan and Jimmy Rivera and all these guys could do. The experience level is completely different, man. So to be honest, I think this is a dog or pass situation. I love Merab, but like I think like what I'm asking myself is what has he done to be a -2 something favorite over Dodson? Like, we're talking about a guy that gave Marlon Moraes one of his tougher fights. He lost, and Dodson issue, we already know Dodson's issue. His issue is, sometimes he loses these close decisions, like Moraes split decision, Lineker split decision. He loses some of these decisions because, he didn't do enough. So that could be the case here. But to be honest, I don't think Merab's anywhere near that level just yet. I think he could be, but just as from what I've seen, I do think he's a little bit inflated. I know he's getting these takedown records, but yeah, against fucking Brad Katona and Casey Kinney, who are, no offense to Casey, Casey's my boy, but Casey gets taken down every single fight, man. Like, and the last kid was a fill-in. So, I think Merab's probably going to outwork him, and probably avoid getting caught, but I don't see him holding him down. He's going to have to just clinch him the entire time. And in the striking exchanges, bro, I see it being one of those things where if you underestimate Dodson for any significant amount of time, bro, he will crack you. He will drop you. And I do feel like, Dodson, another thing that I wanted to say is, Dodson finally left Winklejohn and Greg Jackson, man. He took.
Where's he at?
He's at the other one. At the other
Tom Vaughn?
Nah, the fucking where like Venata and them train at.
Diet Jackson.
Yeah, the junior Jackson gym, and he's doing trains with Cowboy and shit too. But I think that he said himself, he said that he wasn't getting better with Winklejohn. He said, obviously, look at my fights. I wasn't getting better. He said kind of something similar to what Diego Sanchez said, that they were kind of just like, going through the motions with him for so long. And he kind of feels like he wasted a lot of time there. He said that, he kind of just feels like now you're going to start seeing him. But, man, I love Merab, man. I love this kid's energy. This kid's so positive. It's just that, from a skill standpoint, I think he's really slow in the exchanges. And I do think he's going to have a tough time holding him down. But I do think he's going to be leading the dance. So I'll take him for a split decision win. But I think it's going to be a lot tougher than the line.
Man, I can't wait for this fight. And I'll just go ahead and say I'm a little more confident on Merab than you are. But yeah, I feel you. Dodson does deserve respect, no doubt about it. Knocked out TJ Dillashaw, beat Pedro Munoz, even though I thought he lost that fight. Knocked out Nathaniel Wood. But even going into the Nathaniel Wood, I bet Nathaniel Wood. And my whole thing was like, we're going to outwork him. But I know Nathaniel's chinny. Hopefully we don't get knocked out. And we got knocked out. Whereas going into this one, I don't think Merab's chinny. I think Merab's got the best cardio in the entire division. So I think even if Merab gets dropped, his cardio is so damn good that he's going to recover. He's going to get back up. And yeah, I know the stat says that John Dodson has 80% takedown defense. And honestly, I think after this fight, it'll still say that he's got really good takedown defense, because I think he's going to stuff the first takedown. I think he's going to stuff the second takedown. I think he's going to stuff the third takedown. I just don't think he's going to stuff the fourth, fifth, sixth, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th takedown, And I think he might pop back up from a couple of them. He's got a great get-up game. It's just that when you talk about a guy like Merab and his name being the Machine, and yeah, not just because he gets so many takedowns, but more so because he doesn't get discouraged if you get back up. Like if you watch Weidman's fight the other day against Akhmedov, when Akhmedov got back up, all of a sudden you see Weidman like breathing, huffing and puffing hard. Whereas Merab, you get back up, it's like no big deal. He doesn't get discouraged at all. He's going to try again over and over. And I don't care what kind of elevation John Dodson is training at. He is going to get gassed out. He is going to get tired. And by the time the second and third round rolls around, I feel like then he's not going to be able to get back up, and then he's going to start complaining about low blows, about his hair getting pulled, the whole bit. I got Merab here to take him into deep waters and drown him. I know the early going might be a little sketch, but I just think this is Merab's time, and I think he's going to take care of biz here in the toughest challenge he's ever faced. And that's no disrespect to Dodson. Like, yeah, I do think Dodson can land a hard punch or two, but like to knock a guy out like Merab, you either need to touch the button or you need to hit him over and over and over again. And I just don't see that happening. So I'm going with Merab here to win a unanimous decision. Now, next up in the heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Junior Cigano dos Santos. He's 21-7, and Jairzinho Rozenstruik is 10-1. Currently, they got Jairzinho Rozenstruik minus 135. The comeback on Junior Cigano is plus 115. Well, Shaq, I've said it many times. I feel like Junior Cigano's run from his UFC debut, that knockout against Fabricio Werdum, all the way to his first title defense against Frank Mir, that's one of the best heavyweights we've ever seen in the history of the sport. That run right there is up there with all the great heavyweight runs. So I think he's a future Hall of Famer for sure. And with Jairzinho, obviously he's coming off a devastating loss as well. But I feel like he's at a better point in his career right now. He's the more durable guy despite the Ngannou loss. And I feel like he's the more confident guy. And one thing I'll say about Cigano, is that I feel like these days he's just fighting for a paycheck. I don't think that, he's got the same hunger he once did, as evidence in that Curtis Blades fight. How often do you see Curtis Blades going out there knocking people out standing? I'm not talking about with ground and pound. I'm talking about standing. Never. I mean, Curtis Blades is not known for being a heavy hitter standing. He's known for, his amazing wrestling, and then he can ground and pound TKO guys. But he goes out there against Cigano, hits him with a hard shot standing, and he didn't knock him out or anything. Cigano just had enough, covered up, let the ref intervene. And I feel like if a similar situation happens here, it's going to be the same thing, man. One thing about Jairzinho, we know his ground game ain't the best, but listen, Junior Cigano hasn't landed a takedown in the UFC since 2014, so I don't really see him doing that. He doesn't go for takedowns. He likes to use his boxing for MMA and his calf kicks. I feel like Jairzinho Rozenstruik's kick returns are on point if JDS wants to come out here with the calf kicks, and then when it comes down to the hands, I feel like Jairzinho can take a better shot, and I feel like he's going to counter him with something big. So I'm actually going to go with Jairzinho to get back on track, and I think he knocks out the former champ, Junior Cigano dos Santos here.
Yeah, I feel like JDS might be done, man, to be honest. Like, I feel like his last fight was a bit alarming, and, he got knocked out, but I think it was from the, just the level change, the threat of the takedown that was kind of throwing him off a little bit there, leading him to get knocked out. So, yeah, JDS, bro, just some of the shit that he says is kind of alarming. I mean, he's been saying dumb shit for a long time. I know you remember when he said, what did he say about Francis? He said, all this guy has is power, I mean, like, no shit, buddy. But all he has is power. But I think Rozenstruik, man, I like Rozenstruik, man. I think he's one of the top, definitely a top 5 striker in the heavyweight division. The other overall parts in his game, at first I was like, but man, Shaq, what about his clinch work? What about his ground game? His clinch is fucking terrible. His ground, but then it's like, man, he's in there with a super well-rounded fighter like Overeem, who knows how to use all of his skills. And I'm like, Shaq, when has JDS ever shot a takedown? I can't even, is JDS gonna come out? And I feel like JDS is that stubborn guy that's gonna go in there and strike with Jairzinho and probably get caught and countered and knocked out, man. So I am going to go with Jairzinho. I think he's in better health, younger. Unless JDS comes out here and looks to switch it up, to the clinch jiu-jitsu style game plan, then I'll be holding my breath like, oh, fuck Jairzinho, because Jairzinho needs work in that clinch, bro. He can't get out the clinch at all in his ground game. All that is still a work in progress, man. And I don't look any lesser on him for getting knocked out against Frankie Murder. Frankie Murder, what happens when the new Frankie Murder, not the one that, a lot of people forget that, man. Dana White even said it. This dude wasn't training for the Stipe fight, man. He wasn't taking things seriously. But I think Jairzinho's the better striker, and I think Junior Dos Santos will strike with him and get knocked out.
Yeah, I mean, I think Francis Ngannou is a future world champion now that he's got his shit together. And I know a lot of the talk of this fight has been, look at the physique of Junior Cigano, because, he was looking kind of fat in that Curtis Blades fight. And now if you look on his IG, he's looking in shape. But I'll be honest with you, man. I don't give a shit what his abs look like. I don't give a shit how cool his mustache looks.
What about his chin, though?
Exactly. What about his heart? What about when he gets hit with a hard one and doesn't want to continue? Cool abs and a nice mustache doesn't fix that. So I got Jairzinho here. Co-main event of the evening in the bantamweight division, we got a showdown between Sugar Sean O'Malley, he's 12-0, and Marlon Chito Vera is 17-6. Currently, they got Sugar Sean O'Malley minus 280. The comeback on Marlon Chito Vera is plus 240. Well, Shaq, I got a question for you. Can Marlon Chito Vera take Sugar Sean O'Malley to that place that Derek Brunson took Edmund Shabazian to?
Yeah, it's a good point. You kind of bring that analogy up. And it's funny, that kind of crossed my mind. And, I feel like the deal in that fight with Brunson and Edmund, man, you could tell Edmund was getting so fatigued after they would wrestle, he would stuff the takedowns, but he would get so tired, after they grappled that, then the striking became closer, and then Edmund was on all fours on the ground, kind of like Edmund's quit position, when he gets on all fours, and you remember from the Stewart fight, but yeah, man, this fight is it's a war zone, because look. Marlon Vera, I'll go ahead and say I feel like he's grown tremendously, since he got signed, and he's earned his way to this point. He's number 15, I believe. He made it to those rankings. The guy is a vicious finisher. And now we got Sugar Sean O'Malley, who I've never been down on, man. I like Sean, bro. Like, Sean is fucking legit, bro. I've been saying that since he fought Terrion Ware. I was like, man, this guy is the real deal. And, his performances have shown, granted, it hasn't been against anyone, that's relevant somewhat, but I definitely think the kid has the skills. As far as how they match up, so, speaking of Vera's last fight against Yadong, I actually bet him in that fight, plus 170. Things didn't go his way. He lost a unanimous decision. And, live, I definitely thought it was a robbery, but, bro, shit was far from a robbery, and I'll be the first to say that. I think it was more so, Bisping was cheering his teammate on, and, was kind of influencing the thing live. But the issue in that fight was, like, some will say that Vera lost the first 7-8 minutes, and then he won the last 7 minutes. But what I saw was basically Marlon's skills in the clinch. He added some trips to his game, the clinch with the elbows. He goes to the body from in tight. But what I saw that I didn't like for this fight with O'Malley was just the boxing, man. There was such a huge discrepancy between the two in boxing that, like, every time they got out in distance, whatever points Marlon just got, Song Yadong would get them right back, because Marlon had no answer, like not even close to an answer for Song Yadong in the boxing. And that's more of the traditional style, where he just stands in front of him. Like, Marlon was shelled up for a lot of the fight, and the first round was definitely Song's. The second, Song got off to a good start, kind of started to slow down, and then the third round, I thought it was a close round. Like, I still thought, like, Song landed some good hooks and definitely touched him, but I do not like Vera's boxing, man. I think he gets hit a ton, and I know we say this all in all of his fights, he gets rocked, he comes back, and, this, but, bro, against a guy like O'Malley, I really think he needs to be pressing with the takedowns from jump, but I personally don't think he has that, like, I feel like people are banking like, oh, if O'Malley gets on the ground, he's not gonna have shit. And I disagree, man. I really do. I think that when you got these this personalized training camp with he's got two black belts at his disposal, his coach Welsh and Augusto Mendez, that he's getting that one-on-one attention from every single day. I feel like he is gonna. We haven't seen it yet, but I think he has it. And a lot of people say, can he push him to that place? So what's the darkest place O'Malley's been in? In the UFC, it's obviously Terrion Ware fight. Granted, he was very young at the time. That was his UFC debut. And, the first round, he's touching Terrion up, cutting his angles, doing his thing. And then the second round, he kind of started to slow down, and Terrion was really, like, pushing the pedal and was really tagging him in. That's where you want to see a young prospect. Like, what's going to happen here? Is he going to completely fold here, or is he going to, suck it up? And he sucked it up, man. I think O'Malley does have that dog in him. If shit does hit the fan, I do think he has that dog in him. But to be honest, man, I don't think shit's even going to get to that point. I like Vera a lot, but, like, I just think there's such a big discrepancy in footwork, angles, boxing that, he's probably, I think he's going to get knocked out for the first time in his career, or I think O'Malley can just keep touching him. I think O'Malley's a different type of striker. Like, I'm not going to make these McGregor comparisons, but he kind of plays a similar game. And me and you have been saying that from day one. He plays that, he baits guys in and he counters them. And if you can play that game, and he was already playing that game at such a young age, and, I'm not going to sit here and say future champion this, future champion, because I don't see him beating no Peter Yan or nothing like that. But I think he's going to win this fight. And I think it's a logical next step fight, because, look, Vera, isn't a guy that's going to come out here and, press with double legs. He's more of like, hop around to the back type of guy. And Vera just gets hit too much from distance. And, it's kind of been the same issue, like for the Song Yadong fight, he got started too late. The John Lineker fight, he got started too late. The Douglas D. Silva Andrade fight, he got started too late. So I think it's either going to be another case of that. He loses the first, half of the fight and just falls too behind down on points, or he gets knocked out. Because I really do think I haven't seen guys, this young cut angles like O'Malley, and just his head movement, like the way he thinks in there, like on the fly, I think is very impressive. Granted, this is going to be as tough as opponent, but also from a betting perspective, like the amount of people, this line's almost went down like a dollar, and I think that O'Malley is the real deal, man. I see this guy fighting these like the Garbrandts and the Riveras and those guys. I really do, man. I think he's gonna beat Chito Vera on Saturday night. I think the value is actually on O'Malley, but I look, if you got Marlon at that line, I don't blame you. He's a good fighter and it's a big line, but I think he kind of falls right into O'Malley's hands, man. I think that Vera likes to take a lot. I mean, look at the Guido Canetti fight. In a lot of his fights, man, he gets hit a lot. And I know that's kind of his MO, but against a guy like Sean who cuts these angles like that and has that technical prowess, I think he's going to lose, man. I got to go with Sean O'Malley. I'll say by stop.
Man, this is a tough fight for me because obviously, firstly, let's just go ahead and get this out the way. You guys know I'm very biased when it comes to Chito Vera. Back when I was first starting Half the Battle and this guy was first starting his UFC career, like when he was fighting Roman Salazar and shit, he was one of the first fighters I ever had on my show. So no matter what, I'll always be biased for Chito Vera, and I'll always root for him because when no one gave a shit about me, this guy gave me the time of day. And I just love his story. The fact that he was in Ecuador, training with cab drivers literally at a gym called 50-50, and he made it to the UFC on that alone. Then when he moved to California at Oyama, now he's actually, progressing. He hit the top 15. So one thing you always like to talk about with a guy like Drew Dober is one day this guy will be rewarded for his hard work. And I feel like one day Marlon Chito Vera will be rewarded for his hard work too. Now, I agree with you. That first round, he's going to get lit up. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He's going to get lit up that first round, potentially get knocked out too. But my question with O'Malley is not from his offense. I know how amazing he is striking. I know the angles, like you mentioned, his pull counter game, his length for the weight class. It's not often you see 6 foot tall bantamweights. It's just I'm wondering what happens when he gets hit. Like, yeah, in that Terrion Ware fight, he did overcome adversity, but like Terrion Ware went 0-4 in the UFC. Terrion Ware has never knocked anything out in his life before. Terrion Ware is not a finisher. So, but I feel like that's a different O'Malley. I feel like after his USADA suspension, he came back, put on a lot of size. Like, you see how big he is these days? He's not that skinny little vegan kid anymore. Now the guy's eating some meat, you know what I mean? So he's put on some size, had some amazing performances. But I don't know what happens when he gets cracked on the chin. I don't know what happens when he's off his back. I don't know what happens if it's 1-1 going to the third round and you got to make that decision to dig deep. I mean, I know the Terrion Ware, it was kind of that 1-1 situation, but I feel like it's different with Chito Vera. And one thing about Vera is he's got an insane chin. I mean, John Lineker was long time considered to be one of the top knockout artists at bantamweight, and Chito ate all his shots, got to the third round, then won the third round on 2 judges scorecards in Brazil. Song Yadong, everyone was talking to like he was the next knockout artist at 135 pounds. And yeah, Chito ate his shots too, no problem. The same shots that launched, Alejandro Perez and all these other guys. So he's very durable. I'm curious to see if his durability holds up here. And I also like how he's handled the mental warfare compared to how other guys do. I feel like, Sean dyed his hair the color of the Ecuadorian flag, which I know Chito's acting like that didn't bother him at all. He's acting like it's no big deal. But you got to think the people around Chito are like, dude, you have to fucking make him pay for that. So I know there's some pressure coming from the Chito Vera camp as far as that's concerned, even though he plays it off like it's no big deal at all. I don't know, man. It's a tough one to call. I definitely think Sean O'Malley is the rightful favorite. And I feel like I was leaning more towards Marlon when he was, around the plus 275 number. I was feeling like, man, maybe that's a good spot to take a shot because, like, no one's exempt from that first L. Like, even going back to that Edmond versus Brunson fight, I still feel like Edmond has a higher ceiling than Brunson. I still feel like when it's all said and done, Edmond's going to end his career higher ranked than Brunson ever touched. And I feel like that might be the case with O'Malley and Vera. I feel like O'Malley projects to be better. He might hit a higher ranking down the line. But sometimes when it's first L time, you lose to guys that you're better than. That's just how it goes sometimes. I mean, Conor versus Diaz that first time. Diaz was that durable guy that was able to take it to deep waters and take him to a place he's never been. I feel like Marlon's got those qualities. It's just about, is it going to happen on Saturday night? I'm not sure. And when I'm not sure, I'll take the big dog. So I'm going to go with Marlon Chito Vera to get a third-round TKO. Main event of the evening for the heavyweight championship, the trilogy between Stipe Miocic, he's 19-3, and Daniel DC Cormier is 22-2. Currently, it's a pick-em with a slight lean on Cormier, minus 115 Cormier. The comeback on Miocic is minus 105. I do see some plus 100s on Miocic on the board, depending what book you look at. So, man, the first time they fought, I felt like Stipe was dominating. He got caught. The second time they fought, I felt like DC was dominating. He got caught. Who you think goes down in the trilogy here?
Yeah, man, this is such a close fight because I think everyone's pretty much playing the same angle here. If the fight gets stopped early, DC is probably going to knock him out. And if it goes to the late rounds, Miocic, will prevail. Man, it's a tough fight because, Cormier, this being his retirement fight, at first it was worrying me, but man, like, Cormier is such a competitor, man, where like, this kind of would be like the perfect way for him to go out against Stipe Miocic. And Stipe Miocic is like, how many times are we going to underestimate him? The champ's at dog money again, it's like, how many times are we going to underestimate this guy? And, and he comes through and I'm like, man, why does everyone keep underestimating him? Well, it's because he gets hit a lot. I mean, he takes a lot of clean shots in his fights. He got dropped against Overeem twice. Frankie Murder, it looked like he was going to kill him, but let's just say Frankie Murder warmed up his chin for Cormier in the first fight. You know what I'm saying? Because I think it was a quick turnaround from what I remember. So, I think that that's the reason why Stipe Miocic will take an occasional big blow to the chin and either get hurt, dropped, and then Cormier, on the other hand, it's more of like, man, he's so short, so he's got to close the distance, and to close the distance, he has to keep moving forward, and Cormier is a big belly guy, and he gets tired in the late rounds, man. So I definitely agree with the angles. From a pick point, man, I'm going to go with Cormier, man. I got to go with DC. Man. Last fight, I think in the 25 minutes that these guys fought, I truly feel like Cormier has won the overwhelmingly majority of it. I just think in that fourth round, Stipe, he found his adjustment, and I'm sure they're going to look to get on that a lot earlier this time in the trilogy fight, but man, I do feel like Cormier is the better fighter. It's just he needs to pace himself properly, and that's a tough task against a guy that Stipe is 6'4" or 5, and Cormier is only 5'10", 11. So he's got to. That's why he's got to take such a. It's like when guys used to fight Vic back in the day. They had to take like 3 steps in just to try to hit him on the chin. And, it's tough, and then you start to gas out. So it could go either way, man. But if you got that dog money on Stipe, I think that like for now, I think that would be the side to be on. I mean, if you could get either one of these guys at dog money, man, I feel like it's a good bet. I feel like this is one of these fights where you shouldn't be opposed to taking either side,
Yeah, look, I'll pick Stipe a little bit more confidently, and I'll tell you why, man. So you watched the first fight, and I felt like Stipe was actually doing his thing. He got started fast. He's actually lighting Cormier up, but off a clinch exchange, beautifully placed right hand by Cormier, knocks him out. Then in the rematch, so I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions that, you know, DC was dominating him and then a couple body shots. And I feel like, man, there's a lot more to it than just, you know, a domination from DC and then a couple body shots from Stipe. I feel like Stipe made him work the entire time. You watch that first round when DC, you know, lands the only takedown that he landed the entire fight, you know, picks him up, kind of tries to do the Matt Hughes, take him to the center, slam him down. And like, Stipe made him work. Like, he wasn't just able to hold him down. Like, Stipe's pushing down on the head, and then the round ends, and it's actually Stipe going for a takedown attempt of his own. And one thing I've noticed about Cormier, every single time he's been in a fight that's, you know, hit the championship rounds, the Jon Jones fight. What was Jon Jones' famous quote? Jon Jones' famous quote was, when it came time to embrace the grind, that's exactly what I did. You know what I mean? What happened in that Gustafsson fight? Gustafsson dropped Cormier with knees in the later rounds. And then what happened in the Stipe rematch? It goes to the championship rounds, and Stipe folds him. So I don't think it's because, you know, Daniel Cormier is not running his miles or any shit like that. I think it's because Daniel Cormier pushes such a heavy pace that he, quite frankly, can't maintain it for all 5 rounds. And now, a year later, you know, he's 41 years old now. He's got 1 foot out the door, talking retirement. What that lets me know is that if this hits deep waters again, why do I think that he's going to dig deep this time? Like, when he's exhausted, knowing that he's about to retire, like, whereas I feel like Stipe is willing to die in there still. So I think Stipe, and I hate to say shit like, oh, tougher guy or not tougher guy, when you're talking about someone like Daniel fucking Cormier, one of the best fighters we've ever seen in the history of the sport. But I really think that Stipe is willing to dig deeper at this point in his career, man. And then I'm also curious to see if he comes out here ripping the body earlier this time. And I know DC is going to have a counter to that because, you know, the counter to the left hook to the body is the left hook upstairs. But it's not just the Stipe fight where we saw him have issues to the body. You remember the Frank Mir fight in round 3? Round 3, the only success Frank Mir had was attacking the body. The Anderson Silva fight, the only success Anderson Silva had in round 3 was attacking the body. So I feel like Stipe should probably come out here, go to the body a little earlier. And then everyone's talking about how this time DC is going to wrestle. It's like, well, DC tried to wrestle last time too. Did y'all forget that? It's just Stipe made him work for literally everything. So I feel like if DC comes out here with more wrestling, it's going to tire him out even faster, which will lead to the finish even quicker for Stipe this time. So yeah, man, I feel like DC's got to have the perfect fight here, or knock him out early, but have the perfect fight here, not gas out, outwork him over the 5-round duration. And I just see that being really hard to do in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round. So I'm going with Stipe here to keep his belt. I'm done underestimating him. I'm done counting him out. Watch him get knocked out in the first 30 seconds, right? But no, I'm done picking against him. I think he defends his belt and cements his legacy as the greatest heavyweight of all time. I mean, this is a guy that beat Werdum, dethroned Werdum, by the way, and dethroned the Werdum that, you know, beat Cain Velasquez and Fedor, beat Junior Cigano, beat Francis Ngannou, beat Daniel Cormier. Like, another win over Cormier, I think it's sealed, man. So I'm going with Stipe Miocic and still. Well, Shaq, now we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So what is the fight to watch for UFC 252?
My fight to watch is going to be the co-main event. You know, I just think that's the war zone fight. You know, I know these two are going to have, an interesting face-off tomorrow. And I just think that's the fight. I know Stipe and Cormier are the legends, and the guys, the 2 heavyweights, the 2 baddest men on the planet. But I think everyone's low key main event is O'Malley versus Vera.
Yeah, I mean, tell me the last time O'Malley or Vera had a boring fight, you know what I mean? And now both these guys worked their way up to a pay-per-view co-main event. It's a beautiful thing to see. For me, my fight to watch is Herbert Burns versus Daniel Pineda. I feel like it's almost a lock that this fight isn't going the distance. And real quick, let me actually look what the line is for this fight to not go the distance. Okay, so fight doesn't go the distance, minus 390. I mean, they're thinking someone's going to get finished. I'm thinking someone's going to get finished. I mean, Daniel Pineda, close to 40 pro fights, never been the distance before. Herbert Burns chokes everyone out or knocks everyone out in the first round. This fight is going to be amazing while it lasts. Herbert Burns versus Daniel Pineda is my fight to watch. Well, Shaq, who is your fighter to watch for UFC 252?
My fighter to watch is actually going to be surprising. It's going to be John Dodson, man, because I feel like he's got a tough task with the machine Merab Dvalishvili, and I feel like Dodson, man, he is underrated, and I feel like, man, I kind of feel like he's in a good place mentally. So I'm interested to see how he performs. How he performs on Saturday against Merab, and if he gets this win, man, expect Merab is super hyped up. I mean, he's minus two something against Dodson, so I feel like if he gets this win to take out two of their top prospects back to back, man, would really put him in a good position. I feel like a lot of people aren't giving him enough credit for that win against Prospect Wood. So Dodson's my fighter to watch.
My fighter to watch is the opposite, Merab Dvalishvili. This is the biggest opportunity of his entire career. I mean, John Dodson is no easy out. You guys already know the people John Dodson has beat throughout his career, the position he's in. This is the first top 15. I was going to say top 10, but really top 15 guy that Merab's ever faced in his entire career. And this is going to let us know exactly where he's at, because it's not easy to beat John Dodson, let alone look good against him. And Merab has landed, 5 or more takedowns every single UFC fight he's had. Some of them he's hit, 11, 12, 13 takedowns. I'm curious to see what the number is here on Saturday night. So for that reason, Merab is my fighter to watch. Well, Shaq, we did it. It's going down this Saturday in Las Vegas, Nevada at the Apex, UFC 252. They can follow you at MMA Genius 05. They can follow me at Best Fight Picks. They can hit us up at bestfightpicks.com. Subscribe to Half the Battle on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify, all the places where we are available. We truly appreciate your support. We'll be back next week for the card August 22nd. You already know it's the UFC debut of Jared Gooden and Impa Kasaganai. Now, two of our favorite prospects got signed to the UFC, and it was supposed to be the debut of Phil Rowe as well, but unfortunately he broke his toe in sparring. He's out the fight, but still got Impa and Gooden, and they got some tough opponents, so it's going to be a hell of a card. And then Pedro Munoz versus Frankie Edgar in the main event. I can't wait. Thank you so much to everybody for the support. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.